All right, so there's some activity going on outside, so you might hear a couple of strange big trucks moving around a little bit. I hope it's not too distracting. I've been doing my best to keep it out of the videos, but it might be a little bit in this one. Just a heads up. Anyway, let's just try to focus in and stay concentrated because now we're going to start building out our first, at least the shells of our UI with React. So what we want to do first is go back to our DeFi staking app, and we can run a just to recalibrate and make sure everything's up to date. Let's run a truffle migrate reset for our blockchain and make sure we get all the addresses and everything up and nice. So let's run that first, truffle migrate. Okay, and we see that our contracts have been deployed back up on the blockchain. Excellent. So now let's open up the code in our text editors. So I'm opening up my visual. So I'm opening up on my Visual Studio Code, and we're back. All right, so we see that we have all of our files, directories over here. So I've got the source, we have the test that we wrote, the scripts. In the source, we have our contracts, we have our JSON, and then we also see that we have a file called components. So I want you to open up the component file, right click in components, and we're going to create a new file in our components. Because if you remember from the first video when we started building this application together, we said that the components is where we were going to be building the front end. So the components is where we're going to be storing all of our components. And what do I mean by components? Well, I mean the components are the individual pieces of functionality in our application. So the nav bar, the functionality, the logic to actually bring in the blockchain information to make it visible, accessible, to change the state of what's going on the state of what's happening in terms of transactions, in terms of the transactions on the blockchain. So the state of the blockchain, if you want to think about it that way as well. All right, so let's go into the component file directory, right click, click on new file, and we're going to go capital A, so camel case, app. So we're going to write app.js. Okay, so the app.js is essentially where we're going to be, it's essentially our main application where we're going to be rendering all the components and the functionality. This is sort of the core. We want to think of this as our core output for this application. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to see as we build other components, but essentially this is going to be the mothership output, so to speak. So what's the first thing that we want to do when we are writing React? When we are writing React code? Well, the first thing we want to do is actually let JavaScript know that we are using the React library, that we're bringing it in. And what we're going to do is we're going to write import React, comma, we're going to want a component, okay, from React. And just like that, we've imported React. And okay, we're done. We've imported React. You can go home. It's all over. Excellent work. Okay, just kidding. It's not that easy. But essentially this is how we bring in React. And whenever you want to be writing React code for your applications, you have to bring in React so that way we can leverage JSX and our components and all the things that come with React, okay? And so the next thing we want to be doing here is actually creating a class for our component. So the way we do that is we name our component. So we do class app extends component, and then we bring in our curly brackets, because everything that's going to go in here essentially is going to be our React code. React code goes in here, and I'll just comment that in. Okay. And so as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, we want to render essentially all of our state, all of the blockchain information, everything here. So what we do is we actually bring in render like this. Okay, and then we can return. And within here, our return, we can actually return if we want JSX. And now when I talked about JSX, I was talking about bringing in HTML into into our JavaScript. Whoa, 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 whoa. Can you do that? Is that possible? Yes, absolutely. This is the beauty of working with React. And so how do we do that? Well, we can actually write a div inside of our return. And in this div, we can actually now write some, in this div, we can now actually write something if we want to be writing some HTML. I can put a header, for example, and in this header, I can write hello world. If I can spell hello world, hell world. Yeah, maybe it could be that too sometimes, but let's go with hello world, okay? And then finally, what we want to do after this is when we're done, we want to export our component so that once it's exported, the script can run and we can register this into our index and it'll show up when we actually launch our local server. And how do we export? Well, it's really simple. All we have to do is write export default and our component, which is app. All right, and is it as simple as that to actually get React working? Well, let's give it a shot together, and let's go back to the terminal. Okay, so back to the terminal over here, and to launch our development server, make sure that we're back in the DeFi staking app, and then just type in npm run start. Okay, and this is going to launch our localhost development server. So let's see here, npm run start. And npm run start is going to execute the script React scripts start, which if you remember was in our package JSON. We actually have the scripts where we set our start script to React script start. And it's going to load up here on the localhost 3000. And there we go. Hello world. We did it. And if this is the first time that you've ever done this, congratulations. You've just entered an entire world of hello worlds indeed. And what you want to do is if you're using Chrome or Firefox or something like that, you want to bring out your development tools. So if you go into tools, browser tools, you can get to web developer tools. And in the console, we can actually run console logs and we can actually see what's going on with errors. When we're building out our front end, helps us to debug. It's great to have this. Dev tool open. As we're coding and we're working. All right, so let's open up the dev tools. We've got the hello world almost done. Why don't we just style it up just a little bit so we can see how that works as well. So if we go back to our code, go back to our app.js. Well, how would we style this out? Well, there's a few ways that you can style in React. And again, this isn't a course on styling, so I'm not going to get so into it. But one way is you could actually just create a CSS file. So what you would do is you would right-click, we create a new file in our components, and we can call it app.css. And then we could essentially just write CSS in this app.css file, and all we would have to do is just import the CSS file by going import app CSS. And by doing that, we essentially just bring in our app CSS, and then we can add those styles here by bringing them in by either ID or by class name. And what's interesting with JSX that you'll note, it's not class-name. It's actually class name, and we use the camel case like that. That's just how JSX works. And we also have Bootstrap, so we can bring in some class. So for example, if I type in class name equals text center, and I save this, if we go back to our page and we refresh, would you look at that? We have now centered the text of the hello world. Amazing. Okay, so now we are starting to stylize our very first React component. All right. I know it's not the most incredible styles ever, but we're going to get there. This is just to show you how React works, how you can use HTML, how React works, how you can use HTML in React, or JSX, how you can stylize it, how you create an app component, and how you import and export. That's really the fundamentals for React. After this, to take it to the next level, we're going to learn about props and state, and then from there it's really your own journey and adventure of getting familiar and expanding your own skill set with React.